Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Andy, thank you for joining Lawyers Who Learn. I appreciate you, as many guests take a leap of faith, not knowing what they're going to get when they join the podcast.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
You're a faculty member of Lawline, and you've done several courses that have been highly rated.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and one of the things I did was I reached out to our different learning solutions attorneys. I said, who should I interview for Lawyers Who Learn, who can share advice, who would be interesting? And Callie recommended you. I'm going to read to you what she said to me.
Oh, no.
Actually, what she wrote in an Excel doc of who'd recommend. What she wrote was he's one of my favorite people. He would be so fun to interview. Think Texas personal injury attorney through and through. He speaks a lot and he's made waves in litigation and med mal. So yeah.
She just likes the hot take warning I put on the front of every one of my CLEs where I say, so everything you're about to hear from me is going to be a hot take and it doesn't reflect the views of my firm, the state bar, my wife, my kids, whatever. My views are my own.
I like it. So let's do the hot take warning today, maybe.
I was going to say, yes, hot take warning.
Okay. So you mentioned, just when I love how you did your bio as well on your site in first person and just more of a story and a narrative versus just like, this is what he's done. And what's great is you talk about, you've been, so by the way, my dad is a retired personal injury attorney for over 40 years.
Outstanding.
That's all he ever wanted me to do. So it was the last thing I ever wanted to do. Let's start there.
My daughter is either going to become a spy or a lawyer, and either one will work for me.
You can do both. But so let me ask, let's start with that. You've been a personal injury attorney since you graduated law school. Is that where you wanted to go, or did you end up there? And again, this is in the guise of Lawyers Who Learn. Think about the lawyer who's graduating now and is like unsure or what to do, or even a personal injury for them. And I am ready to just take this off because it is warm out today.
Yeah.
So you said hot take. You made me hot.
You already know that I'm going to heat it up, and that's why you're taking it. Normally when people start taking off their jackets in deposition because they're about to jump over the table at me, but that's an entirely different story. To your question about how I ended up in personal injury, essentially, I knew that I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer that went into the courtroom, but because of my, I don't know, some experiences I had in college and just where I thought trial lawyering happened, I wanted to be a prosecutor. And I took criminal procedure at Baylor Law School, and I promptly got a C-. That same semester, I got an A- in torts. Okay, if God wasn't telling me something then, he certainly did after I graduated. And I said, no, I'm gonna go back to that prosecutor stuff. No prosecutor's office would hire me. But I applied for and got a job at a high-volume car wreck firm. And I got into that, and I really didn't understand, because being at Baylor, there's a lot of focus on trial, getting to trial, what happens at trial. I didn't understand that all those trial skills happen a lot before you get to trial. Depositions, hearings, site inspections, all the stuff that goes into civil litigation, that I had the opportunity with a high volume car wreck firm, depots on depots on depots, hearings on hearings, and yes, 4.5 trials. Woo! And so I got to get that experience, and I thought, okay, this is where the trial lawyering happens. And then from there, I evolved my personal injury practice. I moved firms. I moved into a different area. And looking at Lawyers Who Learn and lawyers who are coming out of school, first off, listen to your grades. They might be telling you something. That being said, I'm going to brag, but I did get an A in property as well. So maybe I should have been a real estate lawyer. That's a funny story as to why I'm not. But listen to your grades. It may not be what you think that you want to do. And that's a sign to give you, go have another look at what you think you want to do. Look around, look at the legal landscape. The other thing I'd say is that don't stop. You have to be relentless, especially coming out in this market. And again, I'm going to give you a hot take because I'm an elder millennial. But if we're talking about the younger generation, there is a dialogue about making sure you're living your best life, pursuing your passions, things like that. Sometimes you got to eat dirt at a high volume car wreck firm for a year. You just got to do that. And And nobody wants to do that. Oh, law school's so hard. You graduate, woohoo, I'm finally free. It doesn't end. Sometimes you do have to really put in the hours, put in the time. And that doesn't have to be in the office, face-to-face, old partner, making sure you're working, like remote position, Zoom, whatever. But it doesn't necessarily have to be my ideal job right off the bat, because eventually you will get there. And if you were truly passionate about something, then you'll keep going, even if the road gets rough.
I love that. It's funny you say listen to your grades. I never listened to, not that I was ever, I just never really thought grades mattered in regards to who you are and what you're going to do, especially when you think of the successful entrepreneurs. Generally, they were not the best in grades, and maybe because they weren't interested, maybe they weren't book smart. Maybe it doesn't apply to law school. And it's interesting. I'm curious what my grades were, but I hear what you're saying, because with that said, if you had an interview at a prosecutor's law firm when you graduated, maybe you would have done well there, but it's also what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. And
yeah, your grade, you should listen to your grades, but you should not let them define you. I graduated solidly middle of the pack. I am nowhere near law review. But the message I got from getting a C- in criminal procedure was, maybe this isn't for me.
yeah.
And then that way, if I were to interview with the prosecutor's office, they're going to say, hey, how you doing in your criminal law classes? I'm like, oh, really badly. That's a sign.
I got to follow you down this path.
Yeah.
What happened with how you almost became a real estate or property attorney?
So with the property lawyer, I was like, oh my gosh, I was getting good grades, and it was the end of my second year. No, started my third year, and I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I could do real estate law. Dad works in real estate finance. This would be great. We can do this. And so I went into the day in the life of a land lawyer, and I went in and I sat down, and the guy up front was from a very nice boutique land firm. And he said, you know what my favorite thing to do is? My favorite thing is to get to the office in the morning, pour a really big cup of coffee, get in my office, close the door, and spend the rest of the day reading a 10,000-page title opinion. That is my favorite thing to do. I got up and I left. That was the antithesis of what I wanted to do with lawyering. Don't ask me what a fee simple determinative is anymore. I don't know. But then I knew it really well.
When did you really get up and leave?
Yes.
Or you, at the end of the day, you stayed the day?
No, this was a like a lunch and learn thing at the law school.
Got it.
Yeah. Oh no, I wouldn't leave the office. That'd be mean. But I had my lunch. I'm gone.
Yeah. So I'm sure, like you said, working in a high volume car wreck place was not a quote unquote enjoyable experience or maybe an easy experience.
Yeah.
It sounds like an educational experience. So, and it sounds like you were taking us through some of that right there and then. What were some of the things you learned about yourself? Not just substantively about the law, like you're going through the trial practice in motion, but about yourself, about what you wanted, about how long you were going to be there. Were there regrets, I'm sure, at some point in that early stage?
Well, so I look at it very much through the lens of, so I do almost exclusively medical malpractice now. And so I've become very familiar with how doctors are educated and credentialed and where they work and how they get to where they are. Towards the end of working at the high volume car wreck firm, I realized what I now call that I practice emergency law. That because high volume is high volume, because you are a lawyer for 3 months and you have 400 cases, all of these cases are potentially very volatile. There's a depot in this, there's a briefing in this, there's a that. And so then you have to learn, where do I need to go and what's the most important and what's the most urgent? And the balancing of the urgent and the important is something that they do all the time in the ER. And so I was practicing emergency law, that the thing that was the most important and the thing that was the most urgent had to be balanced. And sometimes patients die, sometimes cases are lost. And that's unfortunate, the unfortunate reality of a high volume practice. Wow. But that is also that's also what I learned. And so that's hard, being a perfectionist and a type A 3 on the Enneagram, all of that. Emergency law is not specialist law. The specialist who only has to go to the clinic Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and plays golf on Friday and goes to a conference on Monday. Like, I wore a suit every day to work. not because I wanted to look professional, but because I did not know where I would be going that day. I would show up, the calendar would say, hey, you got traffic court in 30 minutes. All right, we're going there. And there's a deposition in the afternoon. What? There's a summary judgment hearing tomorrow? Bring me the file. Emergency law.
Is that an industry term or you made that up?
I absolutely made that up.
Do you use it a lot when you talk about
Yes.
it?
I'm only now being the statute of limitations has run on having worked at the last place I worked. So I'm only now more opening up about my experience there, especially it is a well-known high volume firm here in Dallas.
When you say the statute of limitations, if they could sue you for talking about it?
I am totally joking. I don't have a non-compete or anything. I say this with my wife because I had a girlfriend before my wife, but I've been with my wife 20 years. So the girlfriend I had before my wife was 25 years ago. And so when we see this girlfriend, who is now a friend with me, my sister, my mother, like totally not my girlfriend in any way, shape, or form, my wife says, oh, your girlfriend's here. And I'm like, the statute on that has run, okay? That was 25 years ago.
Totally. I've been married 20 years and we've been together 27 years. It's been a hot second since that. Okay.
Exactly. So I feel more comfortable talking about my experience now because I'm farther along from it, more mature.
For sure.
And there's less acrimony between me and them now.
And I don't know if you've seen the new series on HBO Max called The Pit, which is essentially ER version 2 and takes place in an ER room in Pittsburgh. Yeah. It was actually supposed to be ER, a new version of ER, then they went a different direction, and now they're being sued by the original creator of ER for taking that. So there's always a lawsuit somewhere.
I've been on my products liability cases. I've been up to Pittsburgh 3 times. So I've got a cousin who lives there. It's a great place to eat and it's a great place to be. But I have not seen what on HBO Max is in Pittsburgh because I've only been to hospitals that are not like that.
Okay. Yeah. And it takes you through a full day. It's just one day in the ER.
And it's 24, but for.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good show. Back to you though. Okay. So you realized, and it's not just that, it's just like your mind can't settle. You can't relax. You're always on high alert. And many people can relate to this in their jobs.
Yeah.
And they do. And what was the turning point? Was it you just start looking for a new role? Take us through just your journey on how you move from that to your next part of your career.
I very early learned that emergency law was not for me, that I wanted to be able to do more quality work. One of the other things back then, we didn't call it emergency law. Back then, we called it, I was making box wine, not Chateau Lafite. And so I wanted to make Chateau Lafite. I didn't want to make box wine. Both get you there. Both are wine. I wanted to make Chateau Lafite. So I started looking for a new role by reaching out to people I had worked with before. And I think that was one of the best ways and a good tip for lawyers who want to transition practices. There's a lot more relationship maintenance that if I'm going to leave my current role, if I go to some place where I can look at you in the eye, my current employer, and say, I am not going to a direct competitor, or I am not leaving because of money or a fixable variable.
Yeah.
I'm leaving because I have a pre-existing relationship with this person, or they do a different type of law, right. Or
not you, it's me.
Exactly. But that's actually worked out. And so yeah. I had clerked for my current firm, Sawicki. I clerked for Sawicki in law school for a year, but he's a solo. He didn't have the space and the time. And so I spent a year working in high volume, but when I wanted to get out, miracle of miracles, he was looking for an associate. And because I had that year of high volume, I was the kind of associate that he wanted, because he did not want to, like, here is the motion, here is how you type it. I already knew that. He wanted to take me from emergency law to specialist law, from box wine to Chateau Lafite. And he's done that over the last 10 years. And he has been the greatest and best mentor I've ever had in the law profession.
Is that at the firm you're at now?
Absolutely, yes. He made me partner 2 years ago, so I'm now partners with him.
And there's how many partners? Is it
just me and Sawicki?
Wow. Okay. So
yeah,
and just remind me, the relationship you had with him originally was through what?
So I clerked for him for a year in law school.
Got it. I was trying to get that. Okay. So to go from a solo practitioner to bringing somebody else on is also, it's not a huge change, but it's something there. Obviously he saw something in you.
Yeah.
What do you think he saw in you?
I very much believe that he has a strong heart for mentorship. I always joke that he's Obi-Wan Kenobi and I'm Luke Skywalker. And he hates that because he dies in the first movie. And I'm like, that's only because you don't watch the first three. And yes, the first stuck. There are 4 movies now that he's alive in. And so Sawicki had hit a real big lick before the med mal caps came in, $606 million verdict. It was huge. He was respected in the trial lawyer community, but had begun to, I don't know, become a little bit more of a recluse because things were good, focusing on the family. And so he wasn't as out there as he used to be. And so I told him in the interview, other than that I could type, he used to write for a newspaper. So he's like, do you type? I'm like, of course I type. I told him I mark it and I want to be a part of the legal community as well as do this work. And so he'd seen my work before. He knew I was competent. I had a little bit of a involvement resume coming in. And also, frankly, another good tip for people who are learning, it also was a cultural fit. We had a conversation about my first deposition with his office. And he said, listen, we're in the neutral zone with them. So I need you to be like, don't piss off the Romulans. Yes, don't piss off the Romulans. Got it. Romulan neutral zone. Don't make them mad. They'll attack you. And so it was a cultural fit that we understood and got each other. But I'm wildly outgoing. He's deep and cerebral. So there is the Oscar Felix vibe too.
What's the age difference?
He's old enough to be my father, but not my grandfather.
Okay. No, that's interesting because you mentioned mentorship and obviously he was doing this for a while. My dad and his partner, they had a younger attorney who became partner.
Yeah.
And when they retired, they essentially sold the practice to him, or they made an arrangement, and he's now been doing it for 15 years and he's built it up. And his name's still on he keeps the name. And
yeah, that referral network can't go away.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I interned when I was in law school one summer at a med mal law firm.
Oh, cool.
And the thing that became apparent to me was what's different about that than just strict personal injury is the costs are so much higher to run a med mal case. And from the experts to all the areas you're doing that. So to take us through a little bit of what you've learned in being now not a specialist. Yeah, specialist. Not being what you've learned being a specialist in med mal.
Yes, we can't legally say I specialize because I am not currently certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization.
Okay, fair enough.
However, I have spent the last 10 years with a practice predominantly in medical malpractice. I have done everything from one surgical mistake to a sexual assault in a clinic, all the way up to wrongful death, plastic surgery. I'll flex my muscles. I had the #1 plastic surgery verdict in 2022, $1,620,058. I have it written on my desk to inspire me. So med mal is the thing I do. And the #1 thing that drives the cost is, of course, the need for expert witnesses. That Chapter 74 in the legislature requires that I have to have within 120 days of filing suit, I have to have an expert witness say that I've got a meritorious claim.
Interesting.
So before I file suit, I am spending what high volume car wreck firms may spend in the life cycle of an entire case.
On the expert witness.
On that, yeah.
So I know there's a bunch of companies out there that specialize in expert witness testimony. In fact, somebody reached out to me yesterday the 2 people who run it are expert witnesses for med mal, and they want to teach a course on Lawline.
I know what they're trying to do.
You think? So how expensive, how competitive is this? Is it almost like a monopoly? Like they're all the same price point and you can't really shop around?
It depends on...
In Texas is where you are, yeah.
No, it really depends actually on the specialty, because there are people like, you can't get an orthopedic surgeon for less than $10,000. And that's...
For just their testimony, to look at the case.
Up to report and maybe a couple of phone calls before deposition. There are other doctors, internists and things like that charge a lower amount because the nature of the specialty is different and they know that they can't command quite that price. But ultimately for me, it comes down to trying to find the balance between I got my clock cleaned in a medical malpractice trial right before the pandemic. I was doing great. I was doing great. I was doing great. And then their expert witness testified. My own paralegal, I looked back and my own paralegal looked at me and was like, we're cooked. Like, she is ride or die. She has been my paralegal the past 10 years. She is the best paralegal this side of the Rio Grande. She's amazing. But even she knew we were cooked. And it was because this expert witness was so persuasive with the jury. She was teaching, she was engaging. And so it's assessing that quality in an expert witness. Because yes, I can get someone who has board certification, who has experience, but if that expert is going to be, yes, no, that's not within the standard of care, that is not going to be as persuasive. So that's yes, we all look at price point, and yes, that's an issue, but you don't do this job if you don't do this practice if you don't have the money to do it. But that's the number one key: is this person going to be persuasive?
If this rule wasn't in, what I don't rule you just said, but my memory doesn't work that way anymore, but, or did it ever? If that rule wasn't there, do you think it is necessary for every case to have an expert witness?
I think it would be critical, but you wouldn't necessarily need to have the board certified orthopedic surgeon up front. It would be critical to have a nurse, an internist, a really good paramedic, somebody who can walk you through hey, you see where this happened? That's a thing. Okay, cool. And then I can go Wikipedia why that's a thing. So you wouldn't need.
Did you just say Wikipedia it?
Oh, yeah. I learned to fly a helicopter that way. Years ago, we had a product liability case involving a helicopter crash. And I'm reading all this discovery and stuff, and we're talking about a mechanical defect in the helicopter. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it. So then I go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. I do the one, do the other, and then I'm doing that thing where and then you get a diagram of controls up in front of you. Okay, so if I do that, it is that, and I do that, push, power, pull, power, push to slow. So I can tell you how to fly a helicopter. Can't do it to save my life, but I can tell you how to do it. Same deal with medicine is if you have a guide about. So years ago, I had a case involving what the heart rhythm was. A lady went in for a surgery. When they gave her the anesthesia, she immediately stopped. Her heart immediately stopped adequately perfusing her body. She was mottled, meaning that the skin was not. It was red and white and red and white. It was all different colors.
Wow.
Which is a sign that your heart's not beating enough, which means the blood's not moving around. The question was, what was her heart rhythm? Because, and I didn't get this till later on in the case because I didn't have the expert witness on this issue yet. That mattered because if she was in these kind of arrhythmias, they're not shockable rhythms. According to the ACLS algorithm, you only use epinephrine and CPR. If it's a shockable rhythm, then you can use an AED and shock them. Why did that matter? Because the surgery center didn't have an AED. So they wanted to keep saying it's a non-shockable rhythm, because then if we have an AED or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If it's in a shockable rhythm, it matters. And so I had to go out and learn cardiology. I had a case where a guy had an undiagnosed heart attack. I had to learn how to read an EKG. It's wacky stuff that you spend hours on Wikipedia. You get the books, you talk to people that you know in the community, and you just.
I remember when I used to go to my dad's office when I was younger, because he did a lot of med mal too, of course.
Yeah.
And he would have a skeleton in his office and diagrams and hands and things. And he really convinced himself that he was a doctor at times. And like in these situations, because he had all his knowledge from these cases. And if we were crossing the street and a certain intersection, you don't want to cross here. I've had 13 cases on this intersection. Do you find that happens with you now? Do you know too much of what can happen in surgery or with anesthesia or any areas? Is anywhere where you've changed your behavior as an individual based on these cases?
Yes.
Interesting. Share.
Full stop. The beginning with the end in mind, I did put my money where my mouth is, and I did go through EMT training. So now I'm a licensed EMT. Yes, we're the bottom of the basic life support system, but I now have had 2 shifts in an operating room and 2 shifts on the back of an ambulance. So I at least have some familiarity with that space. I volunteer with a fire department out in East Texas to try and get some reps in. The number of people that are out there reduces the call volume. But
Sure.
either way, I have become what I affectionately call a difficult consumer of medical services. My daughter is 6 years old and she is wildly non-compliant with the dentist. So to have her cavity filled and a crown put on, we had to give her IV sedation. I have a 15-minute long text exchange with the anesthesiologist because I had a case where somebody died after anesthesia. And he's like, so he said, I'm going to put a tube down her nose to help her breathe. I'm like, oh, so you're using a paralytic. I thought you said we weren't using a paralytic. He's like, no, I'm not using a paralytic, but this is just in case because we're going down that road. And so then my wife is like, my head hurts. And I'm like, what's the nature, duration, severity? And she's just stop. My head hurts. I'm taking a Tylenol, go away. But the other part about that is, imagine how good of a criminal I would be if I became a prosecutor. If I'm this gifted with medicine, if I'm this difficult of a consumer with medicine, imagine how difficult I'd be with like crime if I were a prosecutor.
But let's keep going down this path because this is fascinating. What about when you have to go to a doctor or to a hospital? Are there things that you think of differently now? Never go to an emergency room before for the midnight shift, or don't ever use this type of medicine because of that. I don't know if you've ever done any mass tort against or anything like that.
We have one mass action right now. It's a product defect case.
Okay.
And I just now know to not use that product. But to your point is that, so real quick, just for the record, I do have a son who I love, and he's amazing and wonderful. He's 4 years old. He has not had to go to the hospital. My daughter has had to go twice. The first time, she put a star-shaped bead up her nose. And the thing that I know about that system is that when we went to the ER, where there was a room full of people that were using it as primary care. Cough, cold, flu, cough, cold, flu. And it is the saddest thing in the world that you see a room full of children who do not have access to adequate primary care.
Yeah.
Adults, we make life choices. I don't believe that, but you can believe that too. But children.
Yeah.
But I know that I told the person up front, my daughter has a bead in her nose. That's a foreign body in the airway. I know that's a foreign body in the airway. That just moved her to the top of the acuity. She fell off her bike, briefly lost consciousness. The paramedics came, she got up, everything was okay, go home. But then an hour later, she was still listless and wouldn't open up her eyes or whatever. So we took her to the ER. Walking into the ER, she's like, oh, you damn it. Clearly totally arousable, clearly not. But I'm like, nope, we're here. We're getting that CT scan. I know that if I go up and say, I have a 4-year-old who had a brief loss of consciousness falling off a bike, I know that's going to activate a triage. I said that, they said, Jones, party of two, and we were right in there.
Yeah.
And
with a 4-year-old. Yeah. No, it's so interesting.
What I want to put on that is that I do not use that to game the system. I do that because if you read my paper about EMS, I do that because I do not call unless it's something that I know is going to move me to the top of the acuity level. Because if my son's been in primary care a bunch. If we need primary care, one, we're blessed by material abundance and be able to access it. But two, we need to do that. We need to get out of the way of the people who really do need it.
You wrote a paper, you said your paper about EMS? What do you mean?
Yeah, so I wrote a paper called Who's Coming to the Rescue? It's a paper about EMS and EMS laws and things like that, talking about how you can use knowledge about EMS and first responders better in your criminal, family, and personal injury cases.
Interesting. So
that's part of that lifelong learning thing apparently we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, lifelong learning, part of the lifelong learning is life. And the learning comes through that. So let us transition there a little bit. So you're an adjunct professor at a law school right now, correct? And
yeah,
you've taught 3 courses at Lawline starting back in 2022. And I don't know if you've taught anywhere else, but let's talk about Lawline. How did your relationship with us start? I don't even know the answer to that. Did we reach out to you? Did you reach out to us? Why are you teaching at Lawline?
Well, like all things, I'm doing it because someone asked me. My friend Callie, who told you to interview me, was the one who said, hey, I think you should come teach a course, because I had started teaching right when they put out the new rules of civil procedure. I had been doing, just locally, I had been doing a thing about the new rules of civil procedure. And I think she saw it, she liked it. And so that's one of the ones that's on Lawline. And so I brought that and I was like, ooh, I like this. And so by doing that, that turned into, I got on the circuit doing what I called the post-pandemic rules of civil procedure. And then they ask you back and you write another paper. And then you're like, ooh, I want to learn about this topic. Okay, I'll go write a paper about it. And then you do the CLE and you do the speaking. And then it just snowballs on itself where I'm constantly learning or thinking of opportunities to teach, to share my knowledge, then I then get better at what I have learned.
Teaching is the best form of learning.
Absolutely.
There's a cycle. It's called watch, copy, teach. I think something like that. Learn, copy, teach, or learn, try, teach. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
And so teaching being the best form of learning is one of the main components, because if you want to teach something, if you want to learn something, accept the opportunity to teach it, because
Absolutely.
It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to communicate it effectively. Out of curiosity, how is the experience? You've done 3 courses. What was the experience like? Have you heard from any customers who've seen your courses? Have you got any comments on it? Does that give you energy? Have you learned? Have you improved from that? Let's start with Lawline and then in general.
So it all comes from I'm like Conan O'Brien. I have a desperate need for attention. I'm a recovering after school actor from my college days. My wife originally was a stage manager for the Dallas Theater Center. So there is a performative aspect to this, which is also why I want to do the trial work. And yes, I do care deeply about when I do a thing for the state bar, I ask for those reviews, because it's also like athletes that watch the tape. I go back and read what the audience has to say, because then I want to improve my performance.
Yeah.
So Lawline, everyone's been very complimentary, and I'm lucky that on what I put out there in the world, that it is very complimentary, but I also know that I've got room to improve, and there are things that I can improve on. And so that feedback is very valuable. It's like talking to a jury after a trial. The feedback is essential.
To me, there's 2 components to it. It's one, the feedback is energy, right?
Yeah.
To bring you on there. And to your point, if you can find areas where there's critical feedback, usually they're seeing things that you don't see, and you can move through there. So how does that relate to, I've spoke to many of our guests. It seems like almost all of them are like an adjunct faculty member at a law school. Is this more common than I realized, that many practicing attorneys are also adjunct professors? Or is it just like the people who point me to those guests, those are people who are teachers and learners, and that's where they go? But I would love to hear your story and how you became an adjunct professor, and what the process was to actually teach and learn and grade and all that process.
Yeah, so I think it's 6 in one, a half a dozen in the other on, are there just more of them, or are the people you're just talking to are? Because the term is misleading in that my first actual experience being an adjunct professor was being an adjunct lecturer at Baylor Law, teaching one course in legal writing. It was legal drafting, write a demand, a petition, an answer, and a motion for summary judgment. I do that in my sleep. But you go down there, you read the slides, you grade the paper, you give the feedback, donezo. It's not particularly, I understand now what I'm supposed to do, which is it's about helping them find their voice, and it's about writing persuasively and telling a story. But the first time you teach it, I got to do what they tell me to do. So write the paper, give the assignment, do the grading. But that was as an adjunct lecturer. Like that's not even an adjunct professor. You shouldn't even call me anything, because there's the Samuel Stout professor of legal writing anyway. And then I also taught, but then I went over to UNT here in Dallas, where I was an adjunct professor. What they call it, adjunct professor, where I was a observer among 10 other observers of small groups for a class. Yeah. I wasn't actually the lead professor. And so then now I teach a class called Medical Malpractice here at UNT, where I am the professor who sets the reading, does the lectures, grades the assignments. And that is a whole different ball of wax, because I have to craft the syllabus. I have to decide what I want these students to learn. I am responsible for if they don't learn it, which is different than a practicum class like legal writing, where there isn't substance to be learned. It's like, how do you write in this form? How do you use your voice? How do you shape the clay? But if you shaped the clay, you shaped the clay. In the med mal course, which is, I don't know what they call it, doctrinal or whatever. I don't know. It's not, oh, did you shape the clay? Did you bring clay? Do you even know what clay is? What,
Yeah, no. So the skill set to craft a syllabus, did they have somebody from the school work with you to help you figure that out? Did you look at the past syllabus? How did you step outside of your day job to put the focus on doing that? Because you do need to create the space mentally to work that through.
So I learned very quickly that the word syllabus really just means policies and procedures the university mandates that you tell the students, and that it really comes down to the reading. That's what shapes the course. And so what I had to do was I had to say, okay, if I had the opportunity to go back and take a med mal class, what are the things I would need to know to be more successful? Because when I worked at the high volume car wreck firm, we somehow ended up taking a med mal case, which we were not equipped and should not have taken. But because I was conscientious, we did. And because I was conscientious, it was successful. But I had to learn it all from scratch. And literally, I kid you not, on my Facebook memories yesterday came up was there a how to be an MD with only a JD class I missed in law school? And here I am 11 years later, and I'm an EMT. All I do is med mal, and I swore I would never do it because of that case. But so then putting that syllabus together, I said, what do these students need to know to effectively go in and have a competent conversation in the med mal space when they get out of here?
But was it like finding books that they should read? Was it
no? So that's the thing. I said, in looking at that, it is really about pulling statutes and cases. I want them to walk out of the class with the current state of the law. None of this. Tell me what the Fry factors are. The Fry factors are gone. It's Daubert and Robinson now.
Of course.
Duh. Oh, but that's the other point. I said, hey, med mal is actually just advanced evidence, because it's always expert witnesses. And so it's all about expert witnesses and striking experts. And so if you don't know the current state of expert law, you get out there and I know the Fry standard. The Fry standard is 50 years old now.
Let me ask you this, because we're going down a route that, you are great. You're living up to the hype that Callie set for you in terms of
I always feel bad. I feel like I just monologue and
no, for the energy we said. And so my question that I would love to see if it leads to anything, is there anything that you wished in conversations like this or in class when somebody asks you questions, like you wish you were asked, but you were never asked? And as it relates to learning or your growth path, that looking back, you're like, oh, you know what? I would love to talk about this, but I never get a chance to. Maybe no, like this might not happen, but I always like to give you the opportunity to see if there's anything that pops in your head when I say that question.
The thing that pops into my mind about that question is slightly off of that.
Okay.
I always asked other lawyers when I was looking for work out of law school in the little bit beginning of my career and trying to figure out where I wanted to go. I would ask other more seasoned, more famous, more important, better lawyers, how did you get here? What did you do? And they would always say, well, Andy, it's the damnedest thing. Or, oh, Andy, I can't really tell you. And that just drives me freaking crazy. Because I'm looking for advice and you tell me the universe is random and unfair and I am here because of kismet. That if I had been able to probe a little deeper and listen a little bit more and use the large language model of my brain and find the trend, which is they say, oh, Andy, it's the damnedest thing. I met him at the place and we did the thing. I should have asked, how'd you meet them? Oh, this, that, or the other. What was the thing you did? It was this. Why'd you do that? Because 2 years before I met them, I was doing this. And you can draw the common thread. You can draw the overarching theme. And from that, you can pull out the things you can do. Because it's desperate for young lawyers and law school graduates that they're like, tell me the path. My loans are coming due. Tell me what I need to do and where I need to go. I can do that. I can tell you what I want you to do, but that's not you. But if you can pick out the overarching theme, like you're Andy with middling grades, you got a network. And you got to eat dirt a little bit at a high volume car wreck firm in order to get the things that the next level wants from you. no, that is not what you want to do, but that is actually going to get you where you want to go.
I can really relate to that because to some degree, that's what I think we're doing right here, right now, is I'm asking you, what do you do and how did you get here? And I'm asking you a lot of follow-up questions. And in fact, this is my second time doing this. In 2006, I started a public access TV show when I was in law school, which is essentially the first podcast because YouTube, it just came out. I also put it on YouTube and I was interviewing, maybe it was 100 entrepreneurs in total. Simon Sinek was one of them when he was first getting started. I was asking them, how did you start your business? I want to start my own business. What were some of the things that worked? And this is before, obviously, ChatGPT or anything. So I did ask all these questions. And finally, after dozens and dozens of interviews, I came up with 5 themes to be successful as an entrepreneur. You want to hear them?
Yes.
You probably know them all because you live them every day. And they're all cliches, but they're cliches because they're true. So
absolutely.
The first one and the most important one is you just have to take action. Like they all had example after example of when people were talking about something and they were just doing it. Number 2, which was always usually happened in a loving way from their parents or their spouses trying to protect them, but sometimes not, but usually that is you cannot listen to the negativity of naysayers. With one caveat. If that naysayer is somebody who did exactly what you're trying to do and was successful there, you can listen. Doesn't mean you have to follow. But most often it's somebody who's never done what you're trying to do, wouldn't even know how to go about it. And they're just telling you, don't do it. Number 3, you can't be afraid to make mistakes. We all know that one. But again, I just literally would watch the transcripts. Number 4, you have to network. And network is not just going out to an event. It's having a podcast and talking to great people like you. And number 5, this is maybe one of the 10 commandments is you have to help others without wanting anything in return. And there was just example after example of things that they were doing without wanting it to come back to them. Of course, the universe has a way to make that help them. And so, yeah, I love that. And I love what you were saying there and bringing out there.
Just on that point, one of the things that everything you said right there resonated with, I have kept this coaster on my desk since the first day of law practice.
Leave it right there for a second. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. Oh, I love that. Theodore Roosevelt. Very nice.
It's the, should I object? Should I not object? I should do something because inaction is bad. Should I get something on file? It's late. Well, it's better to be late than not have something on file. Everything you just said there resonates with that notion of you have to act and you got to do something.
I wrote a book in 2019 called The Fast Forward Mindset. In the first chapter, I share one of the biggest, a parable that I heard from 2,500 years ago, an ancient Chinese parable. And it's essentially the phrase, good thing, bad thing, who knows? Have you heard that phrase before?
No.
So I'm going to tell it to you really quick.
I'm going to hit you with the Bushido, so keep going.
I don't even know what that is, so I'm excited to hear it. I'll do it quickly. But essentially, my son says I say the word essentially a lot, and he's right. So I will not say it. A farmer has a horse, and the horse escapes. And him and his son go out looking for it. They couldn't find it. The neighbor sees this, and he says, that's terrible. Your horse escaped. That's the worst thing in the world. The farmer looks at him and says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The next day, the horse comes back, but it brings back 10 wild horses with it. They open the gates, they fix the fence, they lock them all in. The neighbor comes by, goes, you're the luckiest guy here. You got 10 new horses. He says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The next day, his son is trying to tame one of the wild horses. He falls, he breaks his leg. So if the neighbor sees this, he goes, this is terrible. The father says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And then finally, soon thereafter, a war breaks out, and all 18-year-old to 21-year-old men are conscripted. His son can't go because he's injured. The neighbor says, you're so lucky he can't go. He goes, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And the moral of the story is we tend to label a situation bad 10 times more than we label it good. And as soon as you label it as bad, you experience it as bad. And so I use this to make decisions. If you never label a consequence or a reaction as good or bad, it's just the way it is, and you never know which way it's going to go. It allows you to make more decisions. So that's why I related that.
I love that. And so that resonates with me because I have my entire life, I have done martial arts. And so I used to be a martial arts instructor, high school and college. I've been taking karate up here in Dallas. The face fat doesn't show it, but it's in me and it's what I do. But the Bushido is a Japanese warrior philosophy. I think it works along, it's part of the samurai thing. But the Bushido talks about the momentum of past events, that there's no such thing as fate. And events are morally neutral. Things you do, things that happen, good thing, bad thing, who knows, they are morally neutral. But they move, and they move circumstances, and they move you, and they move everything towards a destination. And ultimately, if you eat too many cheeseburgers, you will have a heart attack and die. If you exercise, you will not have clogged arteries, theoretically, unless you're predisposed to heterozygous cholesterolemia. And then your point, we then put the label on it: eating cheeseburgers bad, exercising good. But the momentum of past events is really what matters. It's the moment. And
Yeah.
I look at that, especially in my career. I really hated having that med mal case at the high volume car wreck firm. That is a moment, though, that pushed me in. The moment I got here, I knew exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
Good thing, bad thing, who knows? And then I look at it now, it's like, what am I doing right now that's going to create a momentum to the next thing? Because 10 years from now, I'm going to remember this thing that I thought was bad that's turned out good. It was a good thing that turned out bad. Or frankly, it also applies to relationships with other people. That's why I always try and be nice and kind and thoughtful with other people, but also honest and direct, because relationships with people have a momentum, and then where those people come back. And so there is no fixed fate, but everything has a momentum that goes forward.
I love that. I love when you said 10 years from now, because you look 10 years, even 20 years from now, you'll look back at the shape that you were in, the youth that you had, the energy that you had, and you would do anything you could to be back to where you were in this moment right now. And it's hard to be that moment every moment of the day.
Yeah.
But just look, in 20 years, all you would want to do is be back here right now to what you're doing, and use that when you're thinking about, I wish I had a bigger business. I wish I did this. I wish. That's the grateful mindset. And I love how we started at MedMal we started in a high rec car firm, and we ended up in philosophy about life, but they all tie together, and we're all trying to figure this out and have some fun. And for me, I appreciate being able to share this hour with you, because it's about learning from other people's experiences. And while Zoom is not the best, it allows us, you're in Texas, I'm in New York, we wouldn't be able to get together in person.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're right across from each other. And I hope anybody who has the opportunity to listen to this, either when it comes out or anytime in the future, because it will be online, will be able to experience the journey that you went through, or different parts of it. And so I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you sharing your story.
I am happy to be here. Thank you so much for letting me be on the program. If your viewers and listeners, I'm open to being contacted. I welcome an opportunity to talk with anybody about my journey. So thank you very much, David, for having me on.
Awesome. And just so you know, this will be released on all podcast platforms. About a month or so after it gets there, it's going to actually be in the Lawline catalog. We have a podcast category, so it will be easily accessible there. So
I'll listen to it the next time I'm driving between one boring kid thing to another.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Andy.
No problem, David.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye.